beautiful yet intensely warm summer's day, and we have a special visitor on the Headspace Green Couch. First and foremost, if you're new to the channel, what we do is we are a culture channel that documents, archives, talks about, dissects, analyzes news around culture, particularly hip hop, but also pop culture in general around the continent, in the country of South Africa. So it's always amazing when we have feedback from people who are actively doing cultural work in and of themselves. So the brother next to me is somebody who I would define as a cultural worker, just beyond your work in rap, hip hop, the academy, etc. I think it all kind of boils down to working for culture, and culture is expansive. It's the culture of your people, it's the culture of intention, form, art. So without any further ado, folks, Headspaces, please welcome for this beautiful dialogue, Pius all the way from Switzerland. Let's make a round of applause. We don't usually have, this is our first like technically international. Like yo, we're global with it. Let's do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for honoring the invite, my brother. How do you feel?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
It's an amazing opportunity to finally, be in that space, talking to you in person. Because as you said, I was tapping into the headspace.
Yeah.
I love the content in a way of preserving and archiving not only hip hop culture, as you say, music in general. It transcends spaces and boundaries. So it reached Switzerland in a way.
Yeah.
But it also, I don't look in a way. Music is not in a way to be defined in a way with boundaries.
Yeah.
So that's the beautiful thing about it as well. It transcends these borders that are being built and reinforced all the time. But music will always go through them.
No doubt. Yeah. Talking about transcending borders and boundaries, you are in the south of Africa right now. Could you tell us a little bit about what brings you here? Because I'm really interested, as like when you reached out, I'd heard some of the music, but I never dug deep into the profile. The Bandcamp is exquisite, by the way, like everything you put on there. But just off the record, we've also gotten the chance to talk about you as an individual, and it's just so much outside of the music that you're really doing that I feel is making an impact. So could you tell the folks a little bit about what brings you to Mzansi?
So I would say I hold it high. Iapetus in a way is what brought me here. 100%, because it was a longer journey over the years now. Somehow I was able to organize a concert with my crew back home, Vinyl Culture. We had a 5-year celebration. So Vinyl Culture stands for a collective of DJs. We hosted regular events. It was also a monthly jam session. We started to organize more concerts because we felt like it's the right time and it was what we love to do. So it was mostly a dub reggae sound system operating, and so we did sometimes reggae concerts. And one part was more soul and funk, and even disco concerts. And I was mostly, in a way, trying to push the hip hop, So we all connected with these genres anyway, so it's natural, it's not separated, but it's just these 3 branches. So for the 5-year celebration, we had a full weekender, and Yugen, Blakrok and Kamif came through for Saturday for the hip hop concert. Yeah. But we also had more than that over, and Friday was a beautiful dub night as well. Yeah. So, yeah, and it happened that I was also at that part of time. I was in a seminar on South African history of music history in South Africa. So it just was natural in a way and very organic that we could rebook the flight and invite them for the seminar on Thursday. And on Friday they performed in Basel. And on Saturday in Aarau, in my hometown. So yeah, that was the initial spark. But then now, after writing my MA thesis on Yugen Blakrok's music, that was just in a way also my trying to find a connection point of what inspired me during my studies. So it was naturally hip hop, because that's where my heart is, where I'm also in my free time all the time, but then also just generally the way of the interest in history and futures and her music taps into so much, so I felt like that would be very interesting to do that project. And from that, I just sort of, it kept evolving, it kept evolving, and so I came to South Africa for Ireland mostly, but in Wakanda, tried to link up with as many people from the culture, from the scene as possible, but just also see where it takes me. And so I'm super glad to be here. You know, it's a big pleasure and big honor.
Yeah, you just dropped a massive bomb, and I think like it's important to note it down. You're doing your MA thesis on Yugen Blakrok music.
I did that.
You did that already.
Yeah,
and
done.
I just wanna just put it out there that a lot of rappers don't think their music can travel and become something worth studying. You know what I mean? And I think that's important to reflect on, how the fact that her music touched you to the degree where you did analysis on it and wrote about it as a phenomenon. And I think it's important for rappers to understand that they're not just making something digestible for pop culture, for just the industry of mass market consumption, but they're also making something that on a scholarly level can be worth people diving into in its meaning and its form. So for those watching, you know, I'm big on constantly reminding us that rap isn't something that can just be trapped in this place of fame and celebrityhood. It's an art form, and being an art form, like other art forms, it's worth study. It's worth belonging in spaces and institutions where it can be pieced apart and put together and looked at as an artifact of history and where it can take us to the future. So I'm really excited. I mean, is it accessible online? Is it something other people can read already?
So parts of it are accessible, yeah, not the full one, but definitely I can share the full one if you're interested. But there's two publications on it and they're available. And one is in German, it's a small one, but
cool.
But yeah. So part of it is definitely available.
It's definitely yeah, no, we'll definitely put links in the description to whatever's available as well. So on this journey of like being directly now connected, enamored, part of, I mean literally part of the culture as it actively gestates in South Africa at the moment. As somebody from Switzerland, what are some of the immediate things that stuck out for you about the culture in South Africa? I mean, it can be sticking out in both the inspiring sense, but in any other way as well. You know, I'm just really curious for what it's like to be from your part of the world and to come to our country, and what are some of the observations?
So, I mean, generally, the history of music in both Namibia and South Africa is incredibly rich and very diverse. So, you know, being very interested in hip hop, obviously, also, I'm not only interested in hip hop, I'm interested in all kinds of music. So, to me, it's one of the maybe big differences would be the presence of music everywhere in a way. You know, not necessarily. I mean, you can go. I was in Jamaica, for instance. You have also a different culture there in terms of music is being played in yards, in the public spaces, way more presently than in Switzerland. That's maybe one of the parts. It's also just a very different dancing culture, so people are way more free to dance wherever they feel like. You know, it can be that is so beautiful and so refreshing because you know, somehow I had over the years, you know, like loosened up in a way of being also just, you know, like vibing when you feel like and dancing, and just dancing is a big part of expression, of self-expression. So, you know, that is beautiful to see. But then again, also, you know, maybe it's part of of a global development, I felt also, you know, in different spaces there, it seems to be hard to find spaces that present art for art's sake, where it's not just nightlife and different types of nightlife. So you find maybe the Europeanized techno type, or just, you know, that one, or the amapiano, and just all these different styles you find everywhere. But to really tap into spaces, it was a bit more hard to find. So especially hip hop seems to be still there 100%, but just to find these spaces. So here in where we at, I was in at One Room, so that was a super nice space.
The One Room, so, shout out to the One Room.
Definitely. In Cape Town, it's similar, like One Park, they host DJ gigs that I really like as well. So, I mean, you can find these spaces, and there's radio stations all over, so it's much happening, but it's also, I felt like maybe 10 years before, or 20 years, it would have looked different for various reasons, and it's not only here, I believe it's everywhere in a way that tends to be more hard to have these spaces for art's sake, just, you know, because you always need to generate additional revenues in a way.
Definitely. Yeah, so, man.
So I mean, it's even in Switzerland, so that's also a reason why I went to a radio broadcast channel, because you have just the freedom to talk about music and present music without, you know, waiting for 50 people to show up, so that, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned being part of a public radio station. Could you tell us a little bit more of, it's not only that, but what you really do, like on a kind of a constant, consistent basis, and where people could find that? So be it the music, be it the radio, just all of the activities and ventures that you're involved in.
So I mentioned that collective, vinyl culture, it somehow is not as active as it used to be. So the radio broadcast is somehow part of that collective. So it's that what still is going every month. So it's a monthly regular show that is then to be found on Mixcloud.
Cool.
So we upload it because it's there's still, I mean, it's a community radio, but there's still, you know, because if you share music there, they cannot podcast it themselves, so we need Mixcloud as an external platform in a way. But it's also very nice because you have like, you're doing your own archive in a way for when you upload it after that on one of these platforms. As that is like one of what I really like to do is I go regularly to cyphers if so back home in Switzerland there's like, for instance, Hip Hop Zoo. It's a collective, they host events, and they also have a regular way of doing open mics. And so that also found its branch in Basel. It's stopping now, as I have heard, unfortunately, but that's just, you know, usually on a Sunday.
Okay.
So I would go there when I have the chance for freestyling, so that's what I love the most. That's also maybe a reason for a freestyle MC to actually then sit down and do your songs and release them. It took me quite a long time to finally have my project out. One part is also because I did the beats myself, so I'm doing the MPC beats. It was just a long process for me. You know, I had to really take time to finish everything up. But yeah, that's that part. And as a DJ, if there is a chance, I would also activate spaces just playing records. So in Basel, that's Oro Negro. It's also the label that released my project, Good Friends. It's a similar collective as Vinyl Culture. And with them, it usually happens that we organize events, or just for maybe an album release, we also would DJ together. So I'm sometimes DJing in different venues, but it's not something that I do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's just you need to, you need to find people who just book you, But I really like to do events on my own or with a collective to just set up, the right atmosphere for the evening, and I really like to do that.
Now, I mean, we've done numerous episodes kind of addressing the issue of rap alone not being hip-hop, and that hip-hop is a culture of facets, because the misconception is when a lot of people think hip-hop, they think it's just a kind of music, So a large part of our work has also just been the conscientization around the fact that no, it's actually a culture. And as somebody who is well versed and practicing in two of the elements, DJing and rapping, just firstly, what's your favorite?
For me it's emceeing in a way.
Yeah.
But then I love digging, I love music, and I love bringing music together. So in a way it's so fun and it's natural. I wouldn't say I was a DJ all my life, but to go through my father's cassettes and find the lyrics to music. So that came first to me, and also in a way, if you look at hip hop and its culture, the DJ was first. So in a way, I don't know. It's to me, I wouldn't separate. Freestyling and emceeing is my favorite in a way. I love to do it because magic can happen that in a moment, in an instant. And DJing can be more planned, but it can also be both. But I like the spontaneity in freestyling and emceeing.
No doubt. No doubt. And I think hip hop as a culture is kind of like an archival project. It's a way. It's a way of reassessing the past, utilizing bits and pieces of the past, reimagining them in new ways, and continuing this reproduction of sound, form, dance in ways where we keep preserving, but we also keep innovating. So I'm very curious. Here in South Africa, we've been able to take aspects of our own kind of ethno-musical and indigenous forms and integrate them into our style of DJing, rapping. Are there things in the Swiss hip-hop movement that are very, very distinct? Like, is there Swiss folk music that has resonated with a lot of the crate diggers, that has found itself maybe in hip-hop songs or DJ cuts, or something like that? Yeah.
It's maybe not as deep. I would say what definitely is a unique part is the dialects. Somehow, along Swiss German has lots of dialect varieties.
Yeah.
So it also will end up with different flows, over the years people somehow found to really work with the quite difficult language to rap in. Being Swiss German, but the different dialects, so Bern and Basel, they all sound very distinct, and that speaks out. It's quite interesting to see. Maybe musically, sample-wise, we definitely have folk music, but it's hard to connect that. It has been tried, but it's not as natural as it is here. It somehow seems to be more of a dichotomy somehow, in a way that can be quite interesting.
That's interesting.
But it's not too much of a thing. It has been tried and somehow very well put, in a way. Also, especially if it's commenting on the maybe social politics of Switzerland, it can also be nice to include, the vast folk music that is also a part of Swiss history and culture, but somehow it is a bit of a tension in a way. So if you look at, for instance, the drum sounds in Amapiano, that somehow there's a deep-rooted connection there that is, as you said, reimagined and repurposed in a way. But there's a direct lineage, and I don't see that necessarily or as strongly maybe in Swiss hip hop, but it's definitely been tried to tap into these roots and not just sample the very same sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe maybe speaking personally as well, it's just I try to go into the crates of my father, for instance. That was my first building stone. I mean, to make music. So in the end, it will be a bit, the sample sources will be different in a way, but it's not just, it's just what was around. It isn't necessarily because of the fact that I'm Swiss and he's Swiss. It's just a different input of inspiration.
And the cultural element, because for instance here in South Africa, a lot of the first hip hop pioneers, because hip hop is something that mirrored a greater black experience. This is how most South Africans fell in love with it. We fell in love with the narrative of struggle, aspirational, journeys, and just seeing black people come up and do something resourceful, utilizing the limitations of what they had to become a phenomenon. But there was that kind of schism where in the early days, the fashion that African Americans were wearing wasn't really what we were wearing for the most part. So there was a lot of being accused for trying to be something you were not. So I want to know how it's been in Switzerland. Did cats get the same kind of issues? Did people be like, you pretending to be American? Because you still get a lot of that in South Africa. I mean, as much as the street culture, the fashion, and the music is there now, you get a lot of South Africans that feel like you're trying to be American. Do you guys in Switzerland get that cultural glitch where it feels like for some people who might not be as enamored with the culture as you do, that you're trying to take something that isn't yours? And if so, how do you justify that? How do you say, but it's still me, I'm curious.
To maybe start answering the question, it was quite interesting. The first MC to spit in Swiss German was like a tension, because before they were always rapping in English. So it was a bit within the culture, it was not as accepted to fully embrace Swiss language. It was much more like why it's not English. It was just foreign for them, but actually it's, if you look at it, it's more foreign to rap in English.
In English than
So I don't know. It's definitely been a part of. Maybe it still is to certain degrees. Of also the question of cultural appropriation in a way, to take that foreign culture, but in a way, to me it never felt foreign. On the one hand, I was growing up in a phase, I was talking to you before, that of that peak of Swiss German hip hop, that was somehow, to me, was just a natural given, because I was a boy, I was in the streets with my friends, skating and listening to that music. It was there as much as different hip hop would be around, but that was more, in a way, just I didn't understand it at that time. And later on, I connected the dots and went into how it's connected. And I feel in Switzerland, as it is everywhere in a way, it was mostly the more marginalized people that embraced it the most. So with backgrounds of migration. Not only Swiss people, they would also be part of it, but it's definitely people with Italian roots, with roots from Turkey, everywhere, that somehow ended up in Switzerland. And so they definitely pushed the culture and its identity, but also what is beautiful about it is it never became necessarily like a subgenre, but it was always, we're doing hip hop in a way, we're doing Swiss hip hop. So they somehow agreed at one point on the language use of whatever their tongue is that they're using. Maybe sometimes they would code switch. That's also a part of it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's natural.
Yeah.
Naturally. Yeah.
But definitely somehow, because it was then you know, it connects everyone in the room. It's not just one group, so that's the beautiful thing about it. So in the end, it's mostly people who would not understand it and accusing you of why you're Americanized, or, you know, in a way, or why you're doing this type of music. You're not from the ghetto, so it's not like that. You know, that definitely is. I heard that, or it was even directed at me, but somehow, as you said, you know, in a way, the engagement with its history opens up so much. It's growing your understanding of the world, and it gives a lot of knowledge. So I feel that's the most important part about hip hop culture, in a way, to in the end form these connections that might help us all grow as people.
Definitely, definitely. I really feel like, you know, you said it before off the record, how hip hop as a culture in itself is a knowledge system. And I think part of that knowledge is understanding how to break out of these oppressive constructs that a lot of us find ourselves in, whether be they socio-economic, racial, and what have you, and to kind of step into an open, fluid place that doesn't escape these things, but can allow us to come into them with a more informed way, where we don't restrict ourselves by race or by the socio-economic class, but there's something greater that we can identify with, a creativity, you know, that allows us to dress, to move, to feel, to speak in a way that can access itself wherever it wants, you know. And so I love trying to figure out the different configurations hip hop has taken on in every place that it's kind of sprouted, and how the tensions, the natural tensions that will come. So lastly on that, the racialization of a lot of hip hop, the fact that, you know, for a lot of people they look at it as black music or black culture. Um, how does that actively affect the phenomenon as it's grown and as it develops in Switzerland? Are there still elements of racial tension there as well? Are there people who are of African descent who feel like, yo, these white boys are appropriating something that belongs to us? Or is there more of a kind of like an idealist sense of understanding that these are constructs anyway? So to kind of hold on to these things in a way that separates each other defeats the hip-hop attitude, because hip-hop is, like we were saying, the reconfiguration of the past. So I'm really curious how, just on a personal level, it's been for you.
So it was definitely a part of somehow not that outspoken, maybe. Sometimes it felt like just, you know, if for instance, people with African descent or POC, they would step in, they would automatically have a less, you know, way of justifying why they would do hip hop in a way. That is definitely maybe a part of it. But other than that, I feel like within Swiss hip hop culture, we don't really, at least to my awareness, we didn't really have too much tensions on that level in a way. It's much more when it gets political outside of circles, or it was like happening. There was a big thing last year, I believe, with a Swiss reggae group. So that, you know, it can definitely will be a part of it, but in the end, it might come from the outside of the practitioners and not from the inside. These type of accusations. What I see, and I really like the way it emerges over the last years, I feel like there's way more visibility within hip hop and various styles like Afro influenced, you know, in a way Afrobeats, you know, type of music, or just hip hop, or even drill and grime styles of people who connect with each other, that are not red as white, you know, in a way. So I feel like that definitely is more visible now, which is before. I mean, I mentioned to you the OG Black Tiger.
Black
so
Tiger.
his mother is African. He's still he gets white passed a lot. So there were these tensions all the time, of course. But at the same time, I feel I cannot speak for all the years, and his experience is different. But just my observation is, I feel like it gets way more diverse in the recent years, which is quite beautiful to see. Also, maybe the fact that music, gets the quality of being also heard outside of Switzerland. So these, like for instance, if I may refer to Pronto, is like one artist that uses Swiss German dialect, but he uses so many English words all the time and slang that you can listen to it and you would not recognize it as Swiss. In the first, like it can sound like it could be from, and he has also, I believe, Ghana roots. I mean, somehow he's definitely in that ability to be read as wherever. It could be from wherever. So I feel in the end that's very nice. It
is.
So
it is. I mean, I don't know if it's a correct word, but I also do believe hip hop, like, it creolizes people. It allows us to take the diverse lineages and work with them in ways that are more freer, because a lot of traditions tend to be very rigid to try to protect what they have, their language, and of course with the racial tension, the history of racism, for a lot of people who are termed and labeled black, there's also the resistance to trust any other culture's intention, but also the oppression that they felt through people who are white. And so one of the things that I've really called to, I think, a real hip-hop mindset and experience is working with each other to understand the limitations of these traditions or facets of the traditions that hold us back, because it's never the whole thing. It's a certain attitude of preserving something that doesn't really do justice and sustainability in the present. So it's really cool to hear cats really presently and actively, creatively working with each other in ways that allow for the whole human experience to flourish, not just particular people. And I'm definitely going to listen to Pronto.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of how hip-hop bends language and gives us new linguistic forms, just as through the art form of rap. So, lastly, hip-hop has now reached this grand age. And the Headspace did an episode on some talks that were done in shows in our country about our hip-hop's age as well, like celebrating 40 years here in South Africa. And just without getting into the politics of that, I want, and I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about how hip-hop has grown in Switzerland and where it is right now, but also your experience as somebody Swiss on the South African hip-hop experience, somebody who's been pivotal in also helping some of our archives reach institutions and become preserved. Like, let's talk about the issue of rap and hip-hop as it ages and all the things around that,
So there was recently a documentary done on 30 years Swiss hip-hop. So I mean, it looks at hip-hop as a genre, as rap, Swiss rap, but it shows there's a different timeline in a way. It doesn't go as far back, maybe in terms of rap and Swiss hip-hop, but definitely there's the graph culture goes way longer back, and also b-boying, breakdance. It's been in a way around earlier than actually records being released. So, but in a way, what I see is also the archiving of hip hop in a way. So we have like for instance, there has been people who tried to document the history in a way as a Swiss hip hop museum, which is a web page. Cool. And I feel it's a very nice initiative, but it hasn't reached similar levels which you can see, for instance, with institutions in the US on archives, hip-hop archives.
Yeah.
Also, especially in the UK, it's a big thing nowadays. I feel like there's also amazing exhibitions, for instance, in Leeds, on Leeds hip-hop culture. And so I feel like we, in Switzerland, we have the step to take that archive of its, I feel like every space has its own history in a way, and Swiss hip-hop history is very unique in a way. I mean, it speaks to the Universal Hip-Hop Museum in a way. Also, there's Adam Silverstein, he's working at the Universal Hip-Hop Museum, but he's in Zurich. He's based in Zurich, so eventually there might be connections, but I feel like Switzerland might have a need actually to document what was happening in a way, the same way it's in South Africa, but in the end it's a different context and it needs to be done with different approaches maybe. But yeah, that speaks in a bit to that episode you did on the Hip Hop Museum in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And also generally, yeah, there's different timelines, but in the end it connects definitely to hip hop as a global culture, and we may agree on we are celebrating 50 years this year. Maybe it's 49, but definitely it's a milestone, and it's beautiful to see that somehow people take that moment in time to talk about process of archiving, of also honoring the pioneers, of giving credits and respect where it should be due, and also to see how we could grow further and to take, I feel like podcasts and talks, that's definitely part of archiving, but it should also be in a way using the I mean, that's definitely part of it already, but using the powers of digitization and the possibilities it opens up to make these archives, potential archives, accessible as widely as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. I think a huge part of that is like, I don't know how you feel. I really think that there's a certain level where when we are doing what we're doing right now, working in the culture, and telling these stories, we are also mythologizing. Like these stories become larger than the actual facts. And I think a lot of the debate is people, they'll always try to make the archiving and the telling of the narratives true to a reality. But I think with storytelling in general, the point is not to really try and be factual. It's to try to take the crucial parts of the story and to kind of relay it in the most diverse and impactful way possible. So I think here in South Africa and in other places, the debates have always been about, no, that is not where it started, that's not who started it, this is not. But I think for the purposes of the mythology, it's important for a story to have people that can be elevated as godfathers and godmothers, even though on a realistic level that person had to be inspired by somebody else, Right. I think it's very important for the purposes of any story to have a place where it can start, which can be looked at as a genesis, even though we know that what that implies is that there's something before that. So I don't know how you feel about that whole project, about the fact that what we're doing is we're making myth, we're making modern myths. This is like mythopoesis in motion. It's happening right now as we do it all over the world. What you're doing in Switzerland, coming here, it's a myth. It's a myth coming to life. And one day, people are going to tell your story in ways that don't really reflect how it factually happened, but in ways that try to distill the lesson from it. So I don't know if you look at storytelling in a similar way.
I feel it's a super beautiful observation. I feel like the power of myth in a way, and within hip hop is in a way also the project of maybe history as facts that excludes maybe myth, is something that is broken up not only in hip hop but before also in jazz. So referring to maybe Sandra's myth science, the concept speaks to hip hop as well.
Exactly.
Which is the way of using facts and poetic visions in relation to each other. So in the end, that might create then not only alternate ways of looking at history, but also how to proceed in the future that might not be pre-programmed. And so that's in a way it's a powerful thing to do, to speak into reality in a way, or at least into that, give words to motion.
Right.
Yeah.
And create that portal.
Yeah.
Because I think I was peeping a lot of your music just with the raps, and I feel a lot of mythopoesis. I feel a lot of an imaginative delving into worlds that might not necessarily exist as we live, but they exist as we can imagine them. And I think people underestimate how blurry the line between so-called reality and fiction or fantasy is, whether or not it exists at all. And I think if you can speak a little bit on the musical aspect, like even the fact that you're affiliated with people like Iapetus, who I really think are very, very crucial in South Africa on an imaginative scale. South Africa is rich in culture, but the industry has kind of narrowed down the way culture is depicted in a place where it speaks to stereotypes. And the music of Lymphatic Sabs, Robot the Technician, Yugen, Blakrok has been responsible for breaking us out of the stereotypical ideas of what it means to be black in the townships. Places where it can be magical. It can be a place where not only police or crime exists, but dark horses, occult energies, monsters, and these can be real in a very, very practical sense. The fact that the difference between an actual gargoyle and a politician is very blurry if you look at what the features are, for instance. And I think that's the power in storytelling, is that you merge these two worlds where people don't realize that the magic is right here. So just from listening to your raps and your music, I see you as somebody who's part of that tradition, a tradition of imbibing the music with a lot of magic. But I don't want to speak for you. Here you are, blessing us, and are my kind of observations on the music things that you could relate with?
I feel like that would be spot on, if I may say. I mean, in a way, at least I always try to go for many layers of meaning as possible, and also blur the lines definitely between dream visions, like, and maybe what do you say, like here and there, hereafter, of maybe levels that are invisible in a way, and so in a way that is maybe an element of surrealism.
Yeah.
So, and just that is powerful within not only the language, the possibilities to do that, but also I feel music itself lends to that. So a beat, different, like a specific type of sampling, and like music can create some kind of other world in a way that you dive into emotionally, and you experience it in that particular moment of it being played in the moment. So I tried to go into that. It somehow felt naturally. It was what inspired me. It is the vibe I love the most, maybe. So that's maybe also the reason I end up creating similar types of musics, but in the end, I don't necessarily tap into what. I don't really have the same mythological richness and background of such a long orature as it is, for instance, in South Africa. So to me, it's much more my own family background and family history that I somehow tried to bring into my music. So to have, in a way, my own entry point of how I ended up on that specific point on the planet and that history, to tell that through my music, but to have it as open as possible so that maybe someone who isn't from that place might have an emotional connection still. So yeah, in the end, I guess thanks for seeing that. Especially, it's beautiful in a way you might have the emotional understanding of the music and what is happening with the words. You maybe I can give you a translation. Maybe you know. I'd love
definitely off the record. Talking about surreal, it's been surreal having you here, my brother. Yo, lastly, what's next?
What's next
for you?
For me, I'm super happy to still be here for another 2 months.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to connect more. I will also, before I leave, go to Joburg again.
Yeah.
And I hope to link up with more people again. Maybe if it's might manifest, you're gonna find out the next one again. What's next? Other than that, I will move back to Switzerland and finish. Try to finish the archive project and going towards my PhD soon, hopefully. And I also can give a course, which is super nice, next semester. That's also nice on art as a space to resist and as a space to imagine. So it's not only looking at hip hop, but also at murals and graffiti culture in the public space.
Yo, man, that sounds worth the while. Please keep us informed and in touch with all of that. Needs be. Again, bro, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Pius.
Big honor.
All links in the description. It's man, it's been. I'm just humble. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.